Hey, what's up, classic TV fans? My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the Addams Family, more specifically about Lurch and all the men who potentially were going to play him. I think this is such an interesting video because it's going to look at all of these men, one that will absolutely surprise you, and others which you've probably never heard of in regards to them auditioning for this very famous role of character Lurch. Now, I will present each of them. It took me so long, guys and gals. It took me days and sporadic looking research until I finally was able to come up with the names of each and every actor who auditioned for the role of Lurch, except for one. And I'll leave that one for you to do. And before I get started, make sure to check out, I'll put it in the description below, the video I covered on the Uncle Festers, or the men who tried to play the role and get the role of Uncle Fester before we got Jackie Coogan. Very interesting video. A lot of you loved that one, which spurred on this one. So let's get right to it, guys and gals. We have to first look at the man, Ted Cassidy. Now, in a way, we're working backwards in regards to Ted Cassidy, the man who was chosen for the role of Lurch, a man who actually despised the role after playing him for not too long, a couple years in fact, before the show was canceled. He did not like playing the role after the fact, saw him, the character, as a brute and essentially a monster, never really enjoyed the portrayal. But I think a lot of people really love his portrayal, just his voice, the deep tone, all those noises he used to make, his really slow delivery, follow me, all those fantastic lines that he delivered. Of course, the famous "You Rang," which he came up with on his own. It was pretty much improv, and they loved it, and they kept it in for pretty much most of the episodes. Now, before I get into the other men, the first man that I think you will absolutely be surprised to know auditioned for the role of Lurch, yeah, Gomez Addams. That is John Astin. Yes, John Astin. He looks completely opposite from what we think of as Lurch, but he was essentially the first one to audition where they thought, this is totally not going to work, but we like you. We're actually going to use you and will in fact star you in the show, and you'll be playing Gomez Addams. So they did cast him as Gomez before they picked all the Lurches, or before they picked the Lurch that they wanted, and they put him in front of all these men. They put makeup on them to see who would work and who would be best. Of course, Ted Cassidy won, but let's look at all the men that auditioned and didn't make it. Now, I want to begin with this man, John Dierkes. Now, I'll show a few pictures of him so you get an idea of roughly what he looks like, because remember, all of these men that I'm going to show you do have extensive makeup on them to make them and give them that look and feel to be the Lurch character, whether that's a more dead-like look, a more zombified look, closing one eye, putting wigs on them, and so forth. So, of course, they don't look like this in real life. That's what made it harder to find out who these actors are. Now, John Dierkes is an interesting one because compared to Ted Cassidy and what we got, he is an older choice for this character. Of course, if we start to look at his makeup and so forth, I think there is kind of an attraction to the fact that he is a little bit older. Remember, this is hard to do because we're looking at it through Ted Cassidy. We're setting him as a gold standard, and everyone else in our mind will automatically not meet up to our expectations. But looking at him, I think there's some very interesting features that we could look at. First of all, he is 6'6", so that would made it a lot easier to have him on the show in regards to being someone who is very similar to Lurch. He does have the height. Now, at the point where he did this, he was around 60 years old, comparing that to Ted Cassidy, who was 32 at the time of the role. Now, he does have a lot of endearing qualities that I mentioned. He does have this very serious, stoic look that I think is kind of good for the character and would have worked. Now, in terms of the voice, I think Ted Cassidy kind of nailed it in that role. We'll look at the other actors, see what's off with them or what's different, but I think that John is a good start for us to look at. Let me know in the comments below what qualities do you like about John and what don't you like. I always love to see your comments. Now moving on to the next actor, I do want to focus on him because he's one that very much interested me. He was the hardest to find in terms of his name. His name was Paul Wexler. Now Paul Wexler is another tall one that I think you're all going to enjoy. He does have, in my opinion, a very similar look to a younger James Cromwell. I don't know what you think about that, but he did remind me of him. It's not the same actor, by the way. Paul Wexler, a very interesting choice for Lurch. Paul was 6'6" in regards to his height, so he did have that, in my opinion, in regards to how he looked and what we had with Ted Cassidy. I would say he was the one who more approximated what they were going for in regards to a Lurch character. I like him. I think there is something good about him. I could see that maybe there was something missing there. If we look at him just with John Astin, he has that height. He does have that presence. He does have that morbid kind of look to him, but he's not frightening. I'm going to show you another actor who's, in my opinion, fairly frightening, and that's probably why they didn't want him. Remember, he has to be frightening, but not too overly frightening. It's a fine line that they're trying to balance here. I think Paul was probably, in my opinion, if I were a casting director, I would put him as a runner-up. I think he was pretty good. I could see why maybe, again, maybe Ted Cassidy, just that voice, pushed him over the edge for that perfect fit. But I think Paul is a good choice. What are your thoughts down below in regards to casting him as a role of Lurch? Moving on to the next actor, he has a really interesting name. Hopefully I say it correctly. Joseph Elic. Joseph Elic was in a lot of things. You may recognize him from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was also in 2 episodes of The Twilight Zone. Fairly well-known actor. And what I find really interesting about him is, to me, he seems like just like a younger version of John Dierkes, who we looked at a little bit before. Of course, there's no relation there, but he does remind me of that. Now, standing at 6'3", he was tall, but he wasn't as tall as these other men that we're looking at, and maybe that was one of the decisions that made them not go for him in the part. Another couple things, all of the actors who they picked, they did want to make one of the eyes more closed. That was kind of part of the character, and we do see it here with Joseph. I just don't know if, honestly, he seems like a well put together character. Just his look, just at how he just presents himself as a character, I just don't think he's the right fit. That is kind of what I look at when I see him. He almost looks, I don't want to say fake, but he doesn't seem like someone that I would pick. I would see them choosing him and then it being like a lackluster choice, if that makes sense. I do still think that with Ted Cassidy, they made the superior choice. What do you think of Joseph yourself, especially those who are Twilight Zone fans and probably saw him before? Before I look at Ted Cassidy and some of the shots from his audition, I do want to focus on this man, this individual, to see if you guys and gals may know who he is. Let me know in the comments down below. I'll just name him as the Mystery Man. He impacted me so much because I don't know how to explain it. Some of you may be able to understand. I'm trying to articulate it as best as I can. There's a feel that he gives me where he just comes off as really dead. His face, almost like a swollen look. Kind of, I don't know if you've ever seen any deceased in funerals or anything like that. He gives off that vibe, and I don't know if that's just his makeup, who he is, and so forth. I think he pushed the creep factor too much, to be honest, with this show. There was one actor similarly in the Uncle Fester video that I showed you that I concluded he was just so creepy, too creepy for this show, that I think it was just too much. And I think that's what this actor did. If you know who he is, let me know in the comments down below. But let's take a look at Ted Cassidy and his overall look for the part. And this is it, guys and gals, the man they chose to play Lurch, which I think is just perfect casting. This is the work and job done correctly before, of course, and after, along with John Astin. They did a little bit of work to his makeup and his overall look, and I think they absolutely nailed it. What is your favorite part of Lurch? Is it his voice? Is it his height? Is it his overall character? Let me know down below. And do you think maybe who would you pick as a runner-up? Any of the choices that I've showed you, did they do a good job? Do you agree with me or not? I would love to see your thoughts down below. We'll see you next time. Let me know if you'd like to see this with other characters from the Addams Family, or maybe other shows that I've covered. I'd be really interested in doing that, only if you're interested. We'll see you next time, and don't forget, be hopeful. A big thank you especially to my Diamond tier patrons, Kevin K, David D, Vito L, Sally N, Citizen Kane 359, Ricky, and honorary Patreon Verbal Volley. If you want to become a patron member, links are down below in the description. Thank you.